is if you played with us 2 weeks ago, you'd know that he has been on a little bit of a rogue streak here in Legacy. He is running Pox.
Yes, and the cool thing about his deck is he does not care about True Name Nemesis nearly as much as other decks. He has a number of answers to it.
Yeah, exactly. He has the main deck engineered plague in addition to 2 Knight of Souls betrayals, as well as plenty of sacrifice effects.
Yeah, and to the right of the screen here, we have Vidianto Wijaya, another very successful player, Grand Prix champion in Legacy, playing Stoneforge Mystic deck. Again, a deck that we've seen a lot. 4 Stoneforge Mystic, 3 True Name Nemesis, 2 Snapcaster Mages, and he has 1 Vendilion Click main. The Esper Blade decks, they're very similar. There's maybe 1 or 2 cards that are different, but in general, it's all built around the power of Stoneforge Mystic and True Name Nemesis.
All right, so Reid is going to lead off this game on Wasteland into Cursed Scroll, and that brings Vidianto just with a fetch land and no crack here.
Yeah, and Vidianto does have a number of basics in his deck. He has 2 islands, a plains, and a swamp, so he can actually play around the wasteland to a degree, but with all the sack lands in his deck.
Yeah, well, thanks to Urborg, Reid will still be able to do the turn 2 Hymn to Turok on Wijaya here. So for those of people who didn't see 2 weeks ago the Open, where can you run us down a little bit of how Pox works?
Yeah, so Pox is similar to Rug Delver in terms of it's a mana denial deck, but instead of relying on cards like Stifle and Daze to sort of put pressure on your opponent from resolving things, they use cards like Sinkhole, Hymn to Torok, Thoughtseize. But again, it's all about mana denial. Generally, if you can get past the early stages and get maybe 3 lands in play, you can get to the point where you can power through Pox and start casting Jaces, because they don't have a lot of answers to those higher end spells.
Well, you're just playing black, right?
There's
certain things like enchantments that you just can't deal with.
Yeah, you just can't deal with those cards. Their whole game plan is to either Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek your hand, and then use cards like Hymn to Torok, Smallpox, Sinkhole to sort of deny your mana along with Wasteland.
So Vijaya's going to go ahead and crack a fetch land. He's going to brainstorm in response to this Hymn to Turok, presumably hiding his best cards here.
And this is the situation that VD wants to be in, because Reid doesn't have any pressure on him. He's got a basic land in play plus another sack land in his hand. So as long as he can continue to develop his mana, he has a number of powerful spells that he can top deck. He has obviously Stoneforge Mystic is huge. Snapcaster Mage could be huge. It allows him to buy back a Brainstorm. Also has 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor. So there's a number of cards here in VD's deck that can be a very powerful top decks.
Well, Jace just seems to be a card that Reid can't let Wijaya get into play. Like if a Jace is in play, that's almost the goal for Wijaya here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really trying to get a Jace in play. And the thing about Reid's deck is he doesn't have a lot of win conditions. Again, he's similar to decks we've seen in Standard, where they're just basically, trying to prevent your opponent from doing anything broken early on, but they can't really stop your opponent from top decking. They try to stop them from doing anything broken by minimizing their mana, but again, if VD can get mana in play, he has a lot of live draws in his deck.
Well, that Hymn to Turok's going to go ahead and hit a Swords to Plowshares and a Karakas from Wijaya's hand, and he will just go ahead and make a second island and pass the turn back.
Yeah, so again, he's not exposing himself to Wasteland here, and the Hymn to Torok wasn't that devastating because, again, Swords to Plowshare isn't great in this matchup. Reid just has 2 copies of Nether Spirits.
Yeah. So from Reid's side, we'll see if he can continue to put pressure on here. We see a Mishra's Factory, which that's almost his win con in the deck.
Yeah, and again, the most powerful card in Reid's Duke is probably Liliana the Veil. It's one of those threats he can get into play and continually put pressure on VD's hand. So he's going to really try. He really needs the Liliana to Veil in this matchup.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like he has a turn 3 Liliana. Instead, he's going to go ahead and Cursed Scroll at VD. Shows an Innocent Blood, and it looks like that was the card named.
He had a little fist pump there. And let's see what Reid's going to do here. Might get an attack.
Yeah, so we see Wijaya's hand. He has at least 1 Swords to Plowshares and a Force of Will. He actually hasn't cast a spell other than Brainstorm this game. We see double Wastelands from Reid Duke, but Wijaya very carefully playing around those.
Yeah, a card that's huge in this matchup is Lingering Souls. Unfortunately, VD doesn't have any copies of Lingering Souls in his main deck or his sideboard.
Yeah, that Lingering Soul is so popular about almost 2 years ago when Martel won a Grand Prix in Indianapolis with it, really has fallen out of favor, I would say, in the last half year.
Yeah, I think you see some lists that play maybe one copy, just because it's it's a good threat to have late in the game. But it's sort of been replaced by True Name Nemesis as your ideal target for an equipment.
There certainly aren't the 3 Lingering Souls decks
Exactly.
going
Yeah,
around
you don't
anymore.
see those. You don't see Intuition for Lingering Souls nearly as much as you did like 2 years ago.
Yeah. It does look like Wijaya is, despite having all these lands in play, his hand is a little ill-equipped right now. We see a Supreme Verdict in his hand also. He's going to go ahead and discard Batterskull.
Yes. Speaking of ill-equipped, he discarded the Batterskull there, and now we might see a sinkhole from Reid. Whew, putting further pressure. Oh, yeah.
So Smallpox and Sinkhole that turn. The Sinkhole is going to draw the Force of Will pitching Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, so it's a little card disadvantage for Wijaya, but again, he's pitching a Supreme Verdict, which is pretty irrelevant in this matchup.
Yeah, so there's a lot of 1-for-1 and 2-for-1 going on from Pox. Then let's go ahead and look over at the ways that Pox, how it takes advantage of that. Like, it has card advantage engines, presumably. You talked about Liliana, but then it has a couple, once everybody gets rid of all their lands and all their cards, like, why is Pox winning?
That's the thing about Pox is that it doesn't do much. Like you really need Liliana. That's the main that's the main threat in the deck, really.
Yeah.
You need some sort of reusable way to put pressure on your opponent. On your opponent's resources. And again, look at Reid. Reid did a lot of damage early on. He cast Sinkhole, he cast Smallpox, he cast Hymn to Torok. But beyond that, it's like Vidianto is in a position where he's got 4 lands in play, and again, he has a lot of live top decks.
Yeah, so for the last couple turns, Reid activated a Mishra's Factory. He swung in for 2. That did meet a Swords to Plowshares from Wijaya. Since then, the two of them have just been trading land drops. Reid attempted a Cursed Scroll, but he did miss. So we're still stuck at 21-17 right now.
And Vidianto doesn't have any more basic lands in his deck to search out with the Flooded Strands, so he's going to have to expose himself a little bit to Wasteland. But he does have a Stoneforge Mystic in his hand, so he can rebuy a Brainstorm if he wants to, and maybe trade in that Swords to Plowshare for something else.
We'll see Dark Ritual and a Knight of Souls Betrayal from Reid Duke.
Ooh, that is pretty good against True Name Nemesis and Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah. Well, Reid is also helping Wijaya a little bit here with that Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Vidi actually does have 4 mana available to him, despite the fact without fetching.
Yeah, that's true. He has access to blue mana, a black mana, and he doesn't have to actually sacrifice the Flooded Strands.
All right, so we're going to respond to Knight of Souls Betrayal. Vidi's going to go ahead and cast.
Looks like he just wants to cast the Brainstorm. So he's going to sack a land to get another blue source so he can actually cast a Brainstorm.
So what's the advantage of doing this in response to Knight of Souls Betrayal?
I think it's possible he might just draw Force of Will, because again,
so he's trying to counter.
If he doesn't counter the Knight of Souls Betrayal, his only out now is basically a Batterskull, which he already discarded, and winning with Jace. He does have a Sword of the Fire Ice, but it's going to be hard to equip. It's basically going to be a Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, 0/1.
So he's going to try to draw into a Force of Will here.
Yeah, he hits 2 lands and a Stoneforge Mystic, so no relief there. Does also, the last card is another Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, so not terrible. At least he drew a Stoneforge Mystic. That is a way that he can potentially win. But Reid does have that Curse Scroll in play, so it's going to be really hard for Vidi to win now. He's basically all in on Jace, but there is a Curse Scroll in play.
Yeah.
So very difficult for Vidi to beat the Knight of Souls Betrayal, which is, I think, part of the reason Reid likes playing this deck is because Knight of Souls Betrayal is so good against some of these strategies like Elves and any deck that plays around True Name Nemesis.
I will see Vidi's going to go ahead and crack the fetch land there on end step to shuffle away after the Brainstorm. So Reid is actually trying to just lock Vidi out off all his win cons.
Yeah, he's basically trying to lock out. He's at the position now where he can just try to lock all of Vidi's win conditions out. Vidi does have a Vindicate. He does have an Engineer Explosives, but Engineer Explosives won't do it. He can't get up to 4 counters on the Engineer Explosives. So, yeah, this card is going to be pretty tough for Vidi to beat if he doesn't draw the Vindicator or Jace.
Now, Reid opted there to Wasteland a duel off Vidi. That doesn't mean he will not be able to use his Cursed Scroll. But taking Vidi's lands out of play, presumably then, is more important than Reid aggroing with the Scroll.
Yeah, I think he just wants to try to make sure that he can keep Jace off the board for a turn. But Vidi does have a 4th land, and he does have a Force of Will, but he doesn't have actually a blue card to pitch to it.
Yeah, so you have to wait 1 turn until he can actually just hard cast it. We see 2nd Curse Scroll for Reid Duke. Unlikely he'll get to 6 mana anytime soon, but he casts it to keep his hand at least down to 1 card.
And I'm surprised that Vidi didn't cast Stoneforge Mystic, knowing that, Reid doesn't actually... Oh, wow. Okay, so Reid now has a third
Now he
mana, so
has the
now
third
you
land.
definitely can't cast
Yeah.
Stoneforge Mystic. So
Well, he'd have to cast Stoneforge Mystic.
he could get Stoneforge. He could cast Stoneforge Mystic and gotten the Sword of Fire and Ice and tried to win. If he basically would have needed to dodge a land from Reid for one turn before he could activate the. But
yeah, but now it's gonna be very hard for him to do that. So Vidi's down to 13 now off a activation of Cursed Scroll there, and Reid slowly chipping away 2 at a time, drops another Wasteland.
so Vidi's plan might be to try to cast Stoneforge and equip in one turn. He's going to need Reid to be overly aggressive with his Curse Scrolls, though. It's going to be tough
Yeah,
for him to get that going. But
and Liliana
oh
of
wow!
the
So
Veil
now
is
it's
the play.
so he's going to hard cast the Force of Will. So Vidi does have a chance there if he can draw the
7th land, right?
He needs a 7th land or a just draw the sword. Oh,
he doesn't either get Snapcaster. Yeah. So if he had the 7th land, he could go Mystic, Find Sword, Play Sword, Equip Sword.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not game.
Right, but it's a start.
It's a start at least.
He goes ahead and what he does do is he casts Inquisition of Kozilek on Reid to get the last card, so Reid will have to find something else to hold in his hand for the Cursed Scroll. Which we'll see what he gets. He's going to go ahead and cast to him to draw. And that's huge. That takes both the Snapcaster and the Stoneforge out of Vidi's hand.
And Vidi doesn't have a Brainstorm in his graveyard anymore, so.
Yeah, he wasn't able to hide that Mystic.
Looks like Reid's going to just be able to start going to work with Curse Scroll.
Yep, naming Curse Scroll. And then he goes ahead and plays it. So why do we need 3 Curse Scrolls in play?
Well, you just want to get rid of cards in your hand because, again, you can't actually activate Curse Scroll if you have to name a card in your hand.
You want one card. So
you want your hand to have only one card in it.
All right.
So Vidi still has outs. It's just going to be very tricky. And now he's at 9, so.
Yeah. Showing Urborg, that's one that he really, well, he could get rid of it at the cost of a land.
Yeah, and I think he's fine with that. He just wants to make sure he can keep activating his Curse Scroll. Doesn't want to expose himself to a Sword of Fire and Ice. So, yep, he's going to cycle one.
That. And a pass back. So 4 turns for Vidi to find something. First, nothing so far. He goes down to 5.
Yeah,
it's an Innocent Blood.
At this point, I just don't think there's a way for Vidi to pull out of this. Even if he does draw it now, it's too much damage has been done with his Curse Scrolls.
Yeah.
So Reid Duke just casts Innocent Blood to get a card out of his hand. Passes a turn back, and Vidi just draws another land.
Yeah.
So Vidi's just going to slowly die. And there's Liliana, but Liliana's probably not getting cast this game.
Yeah. So we see Vidi has one more draw to work with.
Let's see. And Reid even draws a land, so he doesn't have to worry about missing with Curse Scroll. Vidi does draw Brainstorm. Let's see.
Will he find... Is he drawing live here?
I don't believe so. He has Engineered Explosive, so he can kill the Curse Scrolls, but he's still got
to be at 1, right? If he kills all of them.
Yeah, he'll go to 1, but he can. If he draws an Engineered Explosive, he could have killed the Curse Scrolls, and then he could have forced Will to Liliana. So he did have an out, but it was basically he would drop down to 1.
Well, he can't force the Liliana because he'd be at 1, right?
Well, he could tap it. I think he had enough mana to actually. He would need 8
8
mana. I think he might have had 8 mana. Yeah.
Okay. So game 1 does go to Reid.
Game 1 goes to Reid, and again, I don't think this matchup's that bad for Vidi though. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that Lingering Souls. Obviously, Lingering Souls makes this matchup so much better for him. But after board, he's able to take out all those terrible cards like Supreme Verdict and Swords to Plowshare from his main deck. He can bring in cards like Surgical Extraction, possibly to go after Nether Spirit. Not sure if it's worth it though. He has 2 copies of Meddling Mage. Again, not great, but worth.
Probably better than what he's boarding out.
Yeah, definitely wants to bring in a Thoughtseize and a Disenchant. Disenchant will give him an out to Knight of Souls Betrayal.
Now, things like Grafdigger's Cage. The Pox deck does play Nether Spirit, however, it doesn't really need Nether Spirit to win.
Yeah, I don't see Grafdigger's Cage coming in. It just doesn't do enough. Vidi's deck has 4 copies of Force of Will. Force of Will is not really a card that's great when your opponent has Hymn to Torek, but at the same time, if he can't let a card like Liliana the Veil resolve, so I don't think he can afford to board out all his Force of Wills. He has 2 copies of Supreme Verdict that are definitely coming out. He has, beyond that though, there's not many cards. I don't think he wants to board out any of his creatures. Maybe True Name Nemesis because he thinks it's just too hard to win with True Name Nemesis, but I just don't think you need to afford to board out threats. I think obviously you want to take out your Supreme Verdicts and you want to shave some of those Swords to Plowshares. I don't think you're worried about getting beaten down by Mishra's Factories. But again, Meddling Mage and Thoughtseize and Disenchant are really the only cards I'd want to bring in. He has 2 copies of Rest in Peace, which I don't think matter as much. 2 Zealous Persecutions, which don't matter in this matchup. Manriki Gusari, maybe he wants to bring that in just as a way to kind of pump up his Stoneforge Mystic to deal with Knight of
Sure,
Souls
just find
Betrayal.
something else to just
But
find another piece of equipment that you could find, I suppose. But it really doesn't do too much.
no, it doesn't do much. So maybe just take out the 2 Supreme Verdicts for 2 Meddling Mages and maybe cut some of the swords for a Thoughtseize and a Disenchant and maybe the Manriki Gusari, to be honest. It's another way to maybe pump up your Stoneforge Mystic and allow you to attack. But in general, yeah, not much going on in his sideboard for this matchup.
Well, on Reid's side, all he needs to do is maintain the lock that he's putting on. So if you look at his sideboard, he has a bunch of hate for different strategies. So we start with cards like Relic of Progenitus, Pithing Needle. He has Engineered Plagues and Ensnaring Bridges. I don't think any of those are for this matchup. I think one of the questions will be, I think Pithing Needles certainly come in. Jace is one of the ways that Reid loses this matchup. So a Needling Jace seems very strong, and you get some equity by naming a Stoneforge Mystic. Outside of that, if there are cards he dislikes in the main, he can use Relic of Progenitus, just as it gains some value because he is playing against a Snapcaster deck and does cycle. I don't know if there are cards he would particularly want to board out for them.
Yeah, I think Chains of Mephistopheles is another card in the sideboard he'd want to bring in. It's pretty good against decks with Brainstorm, but also maybe the Surgical Extractions, just because he's not Lingering Souls is an issue, and he doesn't know if Vidi's playing them or not. It's certainly possible, even though they're not as in vogue as they were 2 years ago, it's possible that Vidi has it, so he might need to bring in the Extractions just to hedge. But
could
again,
you just use Relic of Progenitus there instead, or I mean, you don't get the same kind of value.
You don't get the same kind of value, but you're right. You can cycle it. So Relic, it's also good against Snapcaster Mage. So Relic probably comes in over Surgical Extraction. Yeah, you're right. And as far as his main deck, though, like you said, there's not many cards he wants to board out. Probably Innocent Blood.
Yeah, so the problem with Innocent Blood would seem, to me at least, that the Stoneforge Mystics, like casting Innocent Blood on a Stoneforge Mystic is not particularly enticing. There's no one creature that you really need to get rid of. It seems like the Knight of Souls Betrayals and Engineered Plagues serve as much better removal spells for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, Innocent Blood obviously good against True Name Nemesis, but you have cards like Smallpox and Engineered Plague and Knight of Souls Betrayal, obviously, as well as Liliana the Veil to sort of contend with that. So not sure if Innocent Blood is probably as good as maybe 3 Relic and 1 Chains, and maybe you want those needles in there too, so maybe you swap some copies of, maybe you don't need 4 Dark Ritual.
I do want to point out that Reid's playing in the main 2 Knight of Souls Betrayals and 1 Engineered Plague, and Engineered Plague certainly an interesting card in the main deck. I'm not sure how well he's served by playing it in this matchup. He does have a full set of 4 after post-board. I'm not sure how much of this he'd want to keep in the deck. The Knight of Souls Betrayals are clearly good. The Engineered Plague, probably not as good in the matchup.
Just because you don't even know if Vidi's going to keep in all his True Name Nemesis either.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the card you want to name, but it's possible. It's another way to hedge against Lingering Souls, though. So we'll see what Reid does. Vidi does have a turn 1 Tundra, and he pass.
Yeah, so game is underway. We'll see Reid tanking before his turn 1 play, which to me
Might
is
be a
suggestive of
Wasteland.
a Wasteland or maybe a Dark Ritual line also.
So it looks like he just passes Swamp and go.
All
Looks
right.
like he does have a copy of Hymn to Torek in his hand and a Liliana the Veil, so not a bad opening start for Reid.
Yeah, from Vidi we see another Tundra played and passes the turn. He also has a Scrubland in hand and a Vindicate.
So Vindicate, obviously, important card for him.
Yeah.
Oh, Flusterstorm.
Flusterstorm takes out Sinkhole.
There is he did bring in the Flusterstorm as a way to deal with all those spells that Reid has to kind of punish him early on.
The double blacks, the small boxes, the hymns, and the sinkholes. And we see Vidi going a Vindicate on a land.
Vidi's turning into a land destruction.
That is a surprising. That's not how I expected him to use the card.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to use that as an SOS against something really unfair.
Well, I think Vidi thinks that it's unlikely that the Vindicate will be in my hand later in the game.
That's fair. Reid's going to take
between Thoughtseize or Inquisition or Kozilek, it's probably not going to be able to hit an important card later, so might as well just get a little value out of it.
How important is it to LD the black deck though?
I don't think Vidi's happy with it, but there is a chance you could randomly just land screw Reid. And I don't think the Vindicate's going to do. Vindicate's one of those cards you don't mind top decking later in the game.
You'd rather top deck it later.
But you don't want it in your opening, really.
All right, a Hymn to Turok there goes ahead and hits what appears to be 2 lands from Vidi, leaving him with 2 cards, a Force of Will and 1 other.
So pretty good situation for Reid because he does have that Liliana the Veil. So if he can get it to resolve now, he's going to be in pretty good shape.
So I want to just comment on Vidi's hand here based on how you were talking about Esper Stoneblade. His hand right now is 3 cards, 2 of which are Swords to Plowshares and a Force of Will.
I'm surprised he didn't board out all those swords because And particularly in a matchup like this, you can't afford to have many dead cards. It's too difficult.
Yeah.
Oh,
But the
wow.
last card's huge for Vidi. He gets the land and resolves a Jace the Mind Sculptor.
So I wonder if Reid regrets not playing that Pithing Needle and naming Jace.
So he does have the
turn
needle
before.
in
It looks like
hand.
he does have a needle in his hand.
Well, that'll be a start. There was a Force of Will, however, in Vidi's hand. If he found a blue card on this Brainstorm, this Jace could carry him the whole game.
Yeah, so he has the Force of Will. Not sure if he has a blue card, though. Looks like he...
I don't believe he does.
So here we go. Pithing Needle. Is it going to name Jace?
It's a pair of swords to
resolve,
It's a pair of swords to plowshares.
So yeah, 2 swords to plowshare in his hand. I'm not sure Reid cares that much about those cards. Vidi has a sack land, but it doesn't have that much action in his hand, obviously.
Well, it's interesting because he apparently wants the swords to plowshares, because in that situation he could have kept a fetch land and cracked it, I believe. Unless he'd already made the land for the turn.
Yeah, he made a land for the turn.
So, but this one we will presume will be cracked.
So Reid still doesn't have a 3rd mana. Can't really press the advantage that he has, but Vidi has only 4 cards in his hand, I believe.
He has 3 now.
Cards.
He's going to go ahead and cast Disenchant on the Pithing Needle. So that's the one of Disenchant.
That's the one of Disenchant. So that's a huge turn there for Vidi. Now he's going to be able to Brainstorm again, and like you said, he's got that sack land in play, so he can change in those swords to plowshares. But it looks like he's going to Fate Seal instead.
Fate Seal. So now he's running the danger that Reid has another Pithing Needle. He also Fate Sealed to the bottom, so Reid could top deck one, presumably.
Not only that, but if Liliana comes down here, that could be a problem as well.
And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Reid does draw the land after Vidi puts a card on the bottom, and it's going to be the tap 3 to cast a Liliana of the Veil.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to see Jace the Mind Sculptor versus Liliana of the Veil. I would take Jace the Mind Sculptor in that
I'd rather
fight.
draw an extra card than...
The only issue is that, like, I think Vidi would have been much better served just drawing 3 cards, trying to get into a blue card, and then Fate Sealing. You want to try to draw into a blue card and get rid of that sword to plowshare, especially if you have a sack land in play. I think you don't need to start Fate Sealing just yet.
Now, I want to comment on the play that Reid made here. So, Swords of Plowshares is not a good card in this matchup, but Reid when he IOK'd Vidi, he saw Swords, Force of Will. So after playing Liliana, he went ahead and he's surgicaling the Swords to Plowshares so that his Liliana will get access to the Force of Will in Vidi's hand.
Yeah. And obviously, like you said, Swords to Plowshare are not that great in this matchup, but Reid really just wants to empty Vidi's hand right here.
Yes.
And he's just going to try to put as much pressure as he can with the Liliana. So Reid now also getting a lot of information, knows exactly how Vidi sideboarded. So even if if Reid isn't able to pull out this game, he knows exactly what Vidi's plan is after board. Knows he doesn't have to worry about Lingering Souls.
Right.
Gains a lot of information here.
So he goes through for swords. It looks like there is 1, 2, at least 3 have been kept in, possibly not the whole set.
Yeah, and I think he's leaving. He might just leave in the Swords to Plowshares. Maybe he just.
He did. That's excellent. Yeah, he just failed to find them.
Yeah, he could just fail to find. He just wanted to get rid of the one in his hand and gain a little more information. So great play failure by Reid, because now he's going to be able to just gain perfect information, know exactly how Vidi sideboarded, and Vidi still has to top deck those, can still draw those Swords to Plowshares, which aren't good in this matchup at all.
You know, and if I was Vidi, that would be a red flag to me. If my opponent surgicaled a card and then didn't take them out of my deck, I would think, like, maybe that's not good here.
This can't possibly be a good thing.
And yeah, so that Liliana Plus will hit the Force of Will in Vidi's hand.
So Vidi looking at his graveyard here, deciding maybe he wants to sack now, but sack his Flooded Strand, but looks like he's going to draw for the turn.
And he's going to Jace to Brainstorm, which I like here. I kind of liked him brainstorming instead of Fate Sealing in the first place, actually.
Obviously, Jace, you're probably feeling pretty good having Jace battle Liliana, but I think if he just brainstormed first to try to dig for a blue card, he would have locked the game up.
Yeah, so we see an IOK from Vidi hits Innocent Blood, Knight of Souls Betrayal, so not much relief for Reid. He really needs to top deck a Pithing Needle and needs to do it before Vidi's able to find a counter spell.
Yeah, he does have 2 Pithing Needles in his deck, so he has 1 left. Chains of Mephistopheles would also be a good draw, but he doesn't have 4 mana right now.
We see Stoneforge Mystic from Vidi. That's we'll see which equipment he kept, and he's kept in Sword of Fire and Ice.
But I don't think, does he have another card? I think it's going to just...
It's just going to get eaten by Liliana?
Yeah, I think it's just going to get eaten by Liliana, unless he has another... I don't know if he has any
so
other
in that
cards
situation, do you wait a turn? You can't really wait a turn to play the Stoneforge, can you? It's like it's just going to get eaten. Or you want to find a 2-mana one then?
I think
something.
if you have a Jete in your deck, I think you just go for the Jete. But
Yeah. My
let's
guess is that he wouldn't have the Jite anymore, though.
I don't know. I mean, it's still.
It's-
Yeah, he might not. I'd rather have Jete in my deck than Swords to Plowshare, though. But
Agreed.
so let's see. Reid did draw Innocent Blood. He also has looks like another copy of Liliana the Veil.
All right, so he's going to Innocent Blood away the Stoneforge Mystic. Liliana will plus up to 5. He will get the, discard the extra Liliana, get the Sword of Fire Ice.
Unfortunately, we're just at a Planeswalker staring match right here, and Jace always wins this staring match.
Well, if Reid gets to alt the Liliana, and he separates the piles as Jace and all of VD's lands.
I think
That's
VD's
what
okay
he
with
does,
that.
right?
Yeah, VD's okay with that.
Does he
VD's
keep
like,
the Jace?
yeah, he just ultimates Jace.
That's well, I guess my...
It's like, okay, fine. I'll have just a Jace and win with just that.
Yeah, and remember that VD, his answer to the Liliana was a Vindicate, but that was used early on in the game on a swamp. Well, now that the Liliana's actually down, can VD get rid of it?
He has engineered explosives, so that's
Okay.
that's one way. But I don't think he cares as long as Jace continues to do work. He's okay with that for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare that you get to activate Jace 4 times in a game of Legacy and not win.
Yeah. I think he wants to start Fate Sealing soon though, because he has to realize his best game plan right now is to just win with Jace. Reid does not have many answers. Make sure he doesn't draw a Pithing Needle, and if it's anything but Pithing Needle, just keep it on top of his deck. Yeah.
Everything but Pithing Needle stays on top.
There's not many cards that you have to dodge here. Especially Reid has no cards in his hand. You don't care about sinkholes at this point. You don't care about Thoughtseize.
Right? Nether Spirits
and
could be a thing.
Nether Spirit's okay. Yeah, obviously that's one card that you can ship to the bottom. But in general, I think you just want to keep Fate Sealing. There's not many cards you have to dodge.
Well, you have to dodge Nether Spirits. Cursed Scrolls actually are a big problem.
But not with if Reid only has 3 lands though, you can navigate that pretty well. Especially if Reid is just down ticking each turn. So I think I still like Fate Sealing here because it's a way to win. You know,
just because you're not actually drawing into anything that's real.
Yeah. So again, there's another situation where if VD just Fate Sealed, he's closer to winning this game.
Yeah, Reid went ahead and he drew a sinkhole there. That would probably not have too much of an effect, as eventually Reid's game plan I think his game plan is to split Jace one pile, lands other pile.
And that's a much better strategy when your opponent is much further away from ultimating Jace. I mean, that's why I think Vidi has to figure out what's going on right here, know what Reid is trying to do, and play around it. And your best strategy is to just keep upticking Jace and go ultimate with it.
Now, if you're Reid, do you alter Liliana next turn, or do you put it to 7 first?
I think you have to put it to 7, because I don't think you're going to just win by losing your Liliana and hoping to top deck a way to deal with Jace. I think you need to keep putting pressure on him somehow.
The tempo increase of a turn, of like waiting, there's so little tempo in this game, it feels, that waiting a turn is not really much of a penalty.
Yeah, if you can get rid of all of Vidi's lands and Jace is pretty far away from ultimate, you're giving yourself much more time to top deck an answer to Jace. But Jace will still eventually kill you if you don't draw either a Nether Spirit or Curse Scroll or something. So
a really crucial top deck here for Vidi. He drew a Snapcaster Mage, and he does have that Vindicate in his yard.
Oh, wow.
Which I have to think that's his line, just to snap Vindicate the Liliana.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, that's fine. I just think that the way Vidi played this game, he's playing to top deck when he just didn't need to.
Yeah, he already had, I mean, back in the turn when he had that 4th land and played the Jace, that was part 1. When he disenchanted the Needle, that was, you know, he should realize that was his game plan. And he's letting himself get ulted here.
Wow.
I'm surprised that Vidi didn't snap the Vindicate.
Well, now it looks like he's going to have to, he might thinking about casting Snapcaster Mage in response or just floating mana. Yeah, it looks like he might just float a bunch of mana in response. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't. Did he have the Vindicate in his grid? Yeah, he did, right?
Yeah, because he Vindicated the swamp early on.
Yeah, he Vindicated the swamp early on. So if he does have Snapcaster Mage, yeah, I'd be surprised why he didn't. Reid had no cards in his hand.
Right, no, I mean, yeah, you could have had Jace on a completely empty board.
Yeah.
With your opponent having no board, no hand.
Sometimes you just try to do too much. So was it true? I think he might have had a True Name Nemesis. Let's see what's in his hand here.
So remember, yeah, VD does have to float things in response because once Reid splits
Yeah.
the piles, it's too late. Yeah, but immediately, yes, and as
Pretty
predicted,
clear.
Reid splits the piles that way, and he bins the Jace.
All right.
Oh man.
Wow.
All right. Well, Reid has a chance now.
So Reid has a chance. Wow. I am surprised. Here comes Snapcaster Mage.
Sure.
Yeah. So he did have the Snapcaster.
Jace. All right.
I guess now he's just going to
got a
brainstorm.
plan. I mean, VD's still up. To be fair.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I fully concede that Vidi is still far ahead. The only thing is, I just think he wins with Chase.
Yeah, no, he could be winning is even farther ahead. Yeah.
I'm not sure why he keeps trying to top deck more when you have the most powerful card ever made in play. It looks like Vidi did brainstorm, and it looks like he got another brainstorm there. So he's going to attack for 2. Now Reid definitely has a lot more outs than he did a turn ago, but still under pressure here. Vidi has so many lands in play.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going for an incremental beatdown plan. That's fine as Reid doesn't have a Knight of Souls Betrayal or Engineered Plague down yet, but there has to be some concern on Vidi's side. Especially, how many Snapcasters? So he's already used 1 snap. This is his number 2.
Yeah, he has.
And that's it?
Yeah,
that's it?
he doesn't have any more Snapcaster. Oh, did he use 1 Snapcaster already?
That was last.
That was last game. I think this is the first
game.
Snapcaster he cast. It looks like he does have a counter spell, so he drew the 1 counter spell in his deck, so he has a way to stop that Knight of Souls Betrayal from coming into play if Reid doesn't have Thoughtseize or Inquisition.
All right, so life total is still fairly equal here. Reid is at 16, Vidi at 14. Remember, we're in game 2 at the moment.
Yeah, Vidi just has so many more powerful cards that he can top deck in this position. It's going to be really tough for Reid to kind of pull this one out because his deck, Reid's deck doesn't do a great job from coming from behind.
Yeah. Well, Reid already beat the first Jace, so, you know.
Yeah, well, that's the hard part, yeah. Beating the first Jace. Traded 1 Planeswalker for another.
So we see, I think, a Surgical. Yep, that'll be a Surgical number 2 that was boarded in, and it'll meet Counterspell.
And that was probably going after Jace the Mind Sculptor. So Vidi's going to attack with Snapcaster Mage, Drawing Reid, and here comes True Name Nemesis. So let's see, can we get a Knight of Souls Betrayal? Oh, no, just Curse Scroll. So Curse Scroll can deal with the Snapcaster Mage. Vidi's in top deck mode here. Looks like he drew, wow,
Stoneforge Mystic. That's going to be really strong. Remember, the Sword of Fire Ice is still gone at the moment, so we'll see what else he
can cast Batterskull. So now this is huge. He can cast Batterskull here. So now Reid doesn't even have a Knight of Souls Betrayal as an out.
Well, he can't really, I mean, he's black. He can't actually get rid of the Batterskull, I don't believe.
No. There's really,
he really just can't get rid of it.
He has Pithing Needle, and then he can kill the token, but no.
And Reid does make the draw. He draws the land for the Knight of Souls Betrayal, so that'll do some work. The Batterskull now down to a 3/3.
So Reid can still, you know.
He's still alive. Well, he'd have to first needle the Batterskull, but that's not even enough because he's still taking damage. I mean, if he's playing Ensnaring Bridge, I don't know if he boarded in an Ensnaring Bridge. I doubt he did, but if he did, that would work.
Yes.
For a while until Vidi.
Oh wow.
Okay, Engineered Explosives takes out the scroll.
So let's see. Can Reid find an answer for that Batterskull?
I mean, it has to be Bridge, right?
Bridge, yeah. Looks like Vidi drew another Brainstorm.
All right, another Brainstorm. And this is a 2-turn clock. Reid has 1 more draw here.
There's the 2 Swords to Plowshares that were left in Vidi's deck. So
I'm wondering. I'm really curious to see if Vidi resideboards.
And I think Vidi drew a land and 2 swords, so he's kind of brainstorm locked for 2 turns. So Reid does have a little breathing room here if he can draw an answer to that Batterskull.
He's going to IOK. I think this is just for information.
Oh, no.
He sees a fetch land and then a concession.
Yeah. So Reid was not able to overcome Jace the Mind Sculptor and Batterskull that game, and Vidi goes up to even the things out here, and we're going to move into game 3. Now Reid is on the play. And Reid's deck on the play is a lot more explosive because he can go turn 1 Liliana, something that a lot of decks just can't beat. Turn 1 Planeswalker is pretty good in Legacy. And yeah, let's see what Vidi does, though, because I'm with you. I think he has to kind of suspect why are these Swords to Plowshares
in here.
still in my deck.
They still haven't targeted anything.
Yeah, Reid straight up just didn't care about Swords to Plowshare. I can't imagine. And I think you're right. I don't know if he has the Jitte left in his deck. He might have boarded out. And clearly, in that situation, I'd rather have a Jitte.
Well, I think sometimes it's hard to see the value of what Jitte would be. Jitte's main function is to kill small creatures. With Reid, okay, Reid's only creature is like you don't have to kill Reid's creatures like Nether Spirit. So I could see how you'd say, okay, Jitte is not very good. But as we've seen, I think like its value there was actually that it had a low mana cost. You could Stoneforge and get it all under a Liliana.
Yeah, that's really the value there. Plus, it makes your Stoneforge like a much bigger threat. You know, it's like if it obviously Stoneforge on its own isn't that good. Stoneforge with any equipment is just much better. And there are some times where you're not going to be able to. They might thought seize your equipment. So I just don't think you can afford to let your Stoneforge Mystics ever be dead.
Let me throw out a counter, though. So let's say that most of the reason VD plays equipment is to make his creatures relevant under something like a Knight of Souls Betrayal or Engineered Plague. You know, his creatures are fine as is. True Name Nemesis is fine as is until Reid plays a Knight of Souls Betrayal. And the problem with Jite is that if you have Stoneforge Mystic getting Jite, then that still doesn't do anything under a -1/-1.
No, clearly Jite is not going to be effective a lot of times in this matchup, but I have to believe it's more effective than Swords to Plowshare. Like, the only reason you'd want Swords to Plowshare is if you're really afraid of Nether Spirit or losing to Mishra's Factory. I don't see you losing games that way, though, to this deck. I do see a lot of situations where just a Jite on a Snapcaster Mage can suddenly win the game for you much more. Like, there was a game in that second game, Snapcaster was beating down for 4 turns in a row. Had there been a Jite equipped to it, this game's over.
It would have been one turn quicker, right?
It would have been no
2 turns quicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's just like I just think you want proactive cards in your deck, and even though Jite is not the ideal card, it has to be better than at least one Swords to Plowshare.
Sure.
You know?
We saw at least 3 kept in.
Yeah, you can't afford to draw 2 Swords to Plowshares in this matchup. The only time they're good is when you get to discard them to Liliana the Veil.
Yeah, so the argument for Jite is more along the lines of this is better than Swords number 4.
Yeah, that's the only thing. That's the only reason I'd want it in my deck. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you always gain value out of your Stoneforge Mystics. And there's a chance where sometimes you can't go for one of the larger equipments because you might have to discard them, or you've already discarded them to something like Inquisition or Thoughtseize.
So Pox is a deck that really has been a very big outlier. Reid has picked it up in the last couple weeks, but typically it's not considered a player in Legacy. Does True Name Nemesis make this deck competitive now?
I think the reason Reid probably likes this deck is because you have a lot of answers to True Name Nemesis.
You really just don't care about the card.
If you feel the format is split between decks that try to exploit True Name Nemesis and decks that don't care about True Name Nemesis, then Pox isn't an unreasonable choice because 1, it doesn't care about True Name Nemesis, and 2, it plays a lot of discard against the decks that. So the decks that don't care about True Name Nemesis are like Elves, Show and Tell.
Yeah, Pox is pretty good against combo.
Pox is pretty good against combo because the amount of discard. Plus, against Elves, you have cards like Knight of Souls Betrayal, Engineered Plague. So I feel like that's Reid's thinking. He's like, I'm good against True Name Nemesis decks, and I'm good against combo decks.
Yeah. Now my worry here is that it falls short just not in any positioning, but I'm just in the fact that the deck doesn't always work particularly well.
Yeah, it doesn't always. Yeah,
it's just not as good of a machine, say, as Esper Stoneblade.
It doesn't. It really doesn't have that engine. Like Liliana the Veil is probably the most important card for Reid a lot of the games, and it's that card can get answered by Abrupt Decay.
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to kind of deal with it. So I think that's part of the problem with Pox is that it's hard for Reid to close games out.
Yeah, I almost feel like he'd want Phyrexian Arena or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
that
yeah, exactly. It'd be great if Reid can sort of like have some sort of way to sort of press his advantage. He just doesn't have that many ways to press his advantage, and in a format where people are playing Brainstorm, that can be a huge problem.
Okay. All right, so both players are on 6 for this game 3. We go ahead and see Reid just with a Swamp. He's going to be Thoughtseized by VD. Reid kept a 2-lander, so Swamp, Wasteland. He has Innocent Blood, Liliana of the Veil, Sinkhole, and Knight of Souls Betrayal. So he's digging for that second black source. But once he finds it, it looks like he's in business.
Yeah, so VD here, I'd have to imagine, again, Liliana is probably the most important card, the card he cares about most. Knight of Souls Betrayal can shut off most of his deck, but with costing 4 mana and Reid only having 1 Swamp in play right now and only a Wasteland in his hand, he might not be as concerned. So it looks like Liliana will get taken with.
I say there's a chance that he would have to take Sinkhole if he had kept a Landlight 6. Oof. And there we go, right away. Reid does hit the second Swamp, and he's going to go ahead and Sinkhole away VD's land.
Yeah, and VD does have a Force of Will, but I think VD he does have a blue card to pitch, but he knows he has to deal with that Knight of Souls Betrayal.
This is the concern, right? That Reid now Wastelands VD's next land, and VD has no lands.
But here's the problem with Reid's deck is he has no way to press this advantage. So
yes, VD
could
draw
out of this. Vidi
And
there.
he gives him a turn. There you
one.
go. There's a fetch land. So now he's back in the game. Yeah, this isn't Rug Delver where when they get you to 0 lands, you've lost.
Yeah, you're getting attacked by Nimble Mongoose or Tarmogoyf, you know?
Yeah, so we see Inquisition of Kozilek from Reid. So now we'll get to see Vidi's hand. He's debated forcing it. He has 2 forces, a Batterskull of
Wow.
of Sword of Fire Ice, Snapcaster, and of Stoneforge. He has a lot of expensive things.
So let's see here. Is Snapcaster going to get taken? Or does Reid afraid of that Sword of Fire Ice? I have to imagine we're probably going to see Snapcaster Mage, but I don't know.
Snapcaster Mage, you mean because you don't want him to Snapcast the Brainstorm ever?
Or the Thoughtseize. You know, you don't want him to go Snapcaster Thoughtseize later on.
So
plus, it's a blue card that he could pitch to Force of Will.
Yeah, right now we know that Reid's hand has a Knight of Souls Betrayal and an Innocent Blood in it. He doesn't have any of his card advantage going yet.
Yeah, Stoneforge Mystic, because there's already 2 pieces of equipment in his hand, it doesn't really matter. So I think the only choices were really Sword of Fire and Ice and Snapcaster, and he does end up taking the Snapcaster there. Ooh, Smallpox, another really good draw, a good card here for Reid. He's going to put further pressure on Vidi's hand.
That's going to be brutal on Vidi's mana.
I'd have to imagine he's going to have to force this maybe. Or
Well,
maybe,
no,
it looks like he's going to
let it happen. So I think almost wisely he's just saving his forces for Liliana.
Yeah, Liliana or Knight of Souls Betrayal. That's the only card that matters to him. I think Vidi's thinking is I can work my way through. I can draw my way out of everything else.
Yeah, well, this is the problem with Pox is that they're only you only have to counter about 5 cards out of the deck.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you know that and you play to that angle, I think you're actually in a pretty good shape. The problem is that Vidi doesn't have much to work with because he drew 2 of his equipment.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and make this Stoneforge Mystic. He now has drawn 2 lands again to get himself back in the game, even after that small Pox.
And this is another reason why I like Jite, because even though it's a little unlucky he drew 2 pieces of equipment, being able to get a little value out of this Stoneforge Mystic, it would be huge right here.
And
even if you don't want to play
find
it, and
immediately,
he fails to find, so he did not keep it in his deck.
Yeah, because this Mystic's going to get Innocent Blooded right now.
Yeah, and at least you had a card, even if you don't want to play the Jite, it's something you could discard with later on to a Smallpox or Liliana Veil. Now you're just giving up a card.
Right, so a draw from Reid. He's going to go ahead and cast the Innocent Blood. And that's going to get Force of Willed.
Okay, so Vidi's being really aggressive
that seems
here.
Like, okay, now run me through. That does not seem like the card I'd want to fight over.
Well, no, now he can put the Batterskull into play. That's huge.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
All right, yes.
So, yeah, now Batterskull's going to come into play, and Reid just doesn't have any answers to it. So Vidi's going to be able to just, should be able to win just with this card, because Reid wasn't able to capitalize on any of the early stuff he was able to do.
Yeah, his opponent, and there's Pithing Needle, a little late.
So Pithing Needle can come down. He can name Batterskull.
And he has no targeted removal in his deck.
Yeah, and the other problem is that Vidi still has that Sword of Fire and Ice in his hand. So that's going to make the Stoneforge Mystic a huge threat too. So.
Yeah, so he doesn't cast
I'm sorry, Sword of Fire and Ice was discarded, so there is nothing in his hand.
Okay. 5 swung in, Reid drops to 9.
And there's an Inquisition.
Okay.
Wow.
Tim to Turok, IOK.
Pithing Needle, yeah. Pithing Needle is the only card. Pithing Needle is the only card that matters here. Not sure what Reid can draw here. There's really nothing that he can draw. He's going to he's going to go to at least 4 next turn.
Yeah, I am skeptical on Pox. I will say that. I think the deck's really cool, but
you can't close games out.
Yeah,
you just can't. It doesn't matter how impressive your
and you can't
turns
really
1 through
come
3
back
are.
either.
You can't close it out. Yeah, you can't come from behind, and you can't close games out. That's the biggest problem with the deck.
All right, so we see Brainstorm from Vidi. He has only going to take 1 more swing. Just has to protect his current board.
And he's going to just cast a True Name Nemesis here. Put further pressure on Reid. Now Reid really has no outs to this board.
We could draw a Knight of Souls. And
Knight of Souls would basically just
get him a turn.
Give him 1 turn.
All right, so 2 games to 1. Vidianto Wijaya moves to 5-0. Reid Duke down to 4-1.
Yeah, so not the best start for Reid in Legacy here. But I think Reid's philosophy around the deck and why he thinks it's good for this tournament, I think, are still sound. Obviously, if you can deal with True Name